keeping you up to date across the UK, online, on DAB+, and on the Talk Radio app.
Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. It's me, Rob Rinder, on Drive Time, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock on Talk Radio. Now, one of the questions that we have to ask is the political fallout, and it's not really just about individuals, but all of us. But at the moment, the world, understandably, is focused in on President Joe Biden and how his words justifying the region have been received across the world. He gave a short press conference and then sort of flounced off, you might say. I couldn't possibly comment. Although there it was, I just did. And to give us a view from America, I'm joined by John Christopher Boer, who is the White House correspondent for Real Political News in Washington. John Christopher Boer, I had an academic, it sounded to me like he was an American academic, I don't know, but he gave a lot of numbers and he was pretty well informed. And earlier he said, you know, in the long run, this is not going to have any impact on President Biden's political fortunes whatsoever, and probably won't impact on the midterms in any meaningful sense. Do you think that commentator was right?
I think he was absolutely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not only a political commentator, but an adjunct professor. I've been teaching at university for 13 years,
right,
both at Georgetown and Catholic University of America.
Mm-hmm.
And this will have an enormous impact, not only on Joe Biden, but on the Democratic Party.
How so?
The impact is whether or not people actually believe he's honest and trustworthy and that he did the right thing. Now, we all know by the looks of things, it looked like a forced move. And Joe Biden, if he has any responsibility at all as president, because as he says, like Harry Truman, the buck stops here, it is a question of not whether or not we get out of the country, but how we got out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget, the Taliban made a deal with the previous administration that they would be out in May. Pompeo was there, and also the Abdul Ghani Badara.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the ex-secretary or previous secretary of state and the previous head of government of Afghanistan.
The previous president and the previous secretary of state met with the Taliban in Doha,
Mm-hmm.
and Taliban met in China, and they met in Moscow. Now, the big picture is this. What does Joe Biden do now to bring the country together and not just slap Donald Trump for setting him up for this? And that looks like another movement by Putin to reinstate Trump back in the White House. That is the skullduggery, and that is the frightening part. So your professor is not quite right. It will have a big impact. It all depends where we go from here, Rob, and how Joe Biden comes back to the White House. He's at Camp David now. He has to come back to the White House and not give a 19-minute speech and then take off, as you said, but to deal with this problem and to deal with the individuals who have worked so hard to support the American troops, to get them out and to save the young children, the girls and young women who will basically become sex slaves. We know that as a fact.
Professor Boer, I'm going to stop you there. I certainly agree with your last point about the impact, the horrifying impact that and I say it's not just your country. Don't forget that your NATO allies and the special relationship have served to leave that place in the hell that it is to a bunch of fascists. But Professor Boer, one of the questions is about the, if you like, the landscape of American politics is the extent to which the public at large, across the blue states, for instance, really, I'm going to put it this way because there's no better way of putting it, really care that much. There was a political will across the board when there was, this was opinion polled, for America to withdraw from Afghanistan, and that's what has happened. In a short period of time, perhaps a limited period of time, it isn't America across those critical blue states that Biden has to keep on board. Aren't they going to forget about that forgotten part of the world just as they did prior to 2001?
Well, there are other pressing issues. As you know, half of our West is on fire. We have hundreds of thousands of people dying of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is that when polls are taken, Rob, you know this, that if you ask the poll, should America get out of Afghanistan? Of course we should. And we're spending too much treasure of lives and money. But if the answer, part two of the poll is, if the Taliban and Al-Qaeda took over, should America get out of Afghanistan? And that would be a completely different answer.
Well, that appears to be, there are two different organizations there. That is one of the worries, to say the very least. That's a euphemism, to be sure. Yes. Prior to 2001, there can be no question that the Taliban shielded, preserved, and, well, protected Al-Qaeda, which undoubtedly had a direct result in the atrocity that took place 20 years ago in America on 9/11. Do you think that there'll be connections made to that, and that will have a very serious impact on the Biden presidency and on the way people reflect about and on his presidency moving forward?
Absolutely. And don't forget, as you know, Rob, I'm sure you're steeped in American politics, because everyone on talk radio is. The fact is that in less than 2 years, or just about 2 years, we have a midterm election, which means the Democrats, if they don't do well, could lose both the House and the Senate, and we have Joe Biden is weakened enormously, basically cut off at the knees.
The difficulty is, Professor John Christopher Boyer, is that where does the leadership from the Republican Party come from? At the moment, the biggest noise is coming still from the last president, President Trump. There doesn't seem to be, certainly in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, etc., and so on and so forth, there doesn't seem to be a kind of single personality that is really kind of articulating the position, if you want to call it that, from the right. There are some candidates out there. Nikki Haley, you might consider to be perhaps one of them. But other than that, who's there really as, if you like, a counter personality to Biden that can win for the Republicans in the next presidential election, but also, if you like, as a representative force to win the House back for the Republicans?
Well, I've got someone for you, and you'll hear it's a flashback. As you know, Liz Cheney has been very, very strong and very popular coming against Donald Trump.
But wasn't she ousted by the Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Wasn't she ousted by the Republican Party? I mean,
well, yeah,
not that long ago. I mean, her career was pretty much ended, wasn't it? Look
at the individual who ousted her. I mean, this is a real difficult individual. The man who is trying to be Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, who's basically a joke. Liz Cheney, don't forget, she's the daughter of Dick Cheney. Whatever you say about him, he was no dummy.
Well, he might not be a dummy. I was talking about him the other day. I think I'm right that he was chief of staff at the age of 28. But a lot of people, before he had an extraordinary career, went on, of course, to be vice president and, in many respects, de facto leader of the Republican Party, certainly under Bush Jr.
Yes.
So one of the difficulties about him is that, for many people, he is a hawk. He represents a political philosophy, a species of a particular kind of right-wing neoconservatism, which a lot of people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party pretty much eschew. They don't like. In other words, she seems to be the saber-rattly, warmongery bit of the party that seems to have fallen out of fashion. So how does she have a chance? Have you got anyone else?
I think the challenge is for the Republicans to come up with someone, and this Representative Kinzinger is looking really sharp and really caring, because he doesn't hold any fools seriously. He went off after Trump, and he went off after Biden yesterday, saying he didn't believe either of these guys. And what we need now more than ever in this country is a strong president, and whether or not Joe Biden can prove that what he did was for the benefit of the party and for this country and for our leadership worldwide. Don't forget, we are being judged by not only our allies, but by the perpetrators who are trying to take us down. You know that in the UK.
Can I just pause, because I'm going to ask you, put one name to you before I wrap up with you, and it's been interesting to listen to you. What about the governor of Florida? It seems to me that if you look at what you might describe as the left-wing media in America, a huge amount of their energy is being used to attack him. It seems to me that could only be the case if they're worried about him making a presidential run.
Well, here's how I'll answer it personally. My wife and I have been going to Florida for the last 25 years. I won't step across the border into Florida while DeSantis is still governor. He is an abomination.
Wow.
He is a disgrace, and he is literally responsible for the deaths of thousands and thousands of children because he is ardently against masks. He is supremely ardent against vaccinations, and he absolutely is wanting desperately to be Donald Trump Jr. And what he's getting is a response from the people in Florida, especially the people who actually have a brain, that we are with the wrong guy. And there's a few candidates down there, including Chris, former Chris, and a woman named I believe Friday, who will take him out. He is almost as bad as Abbott in Texas. These are anti-science, anti-human, and the fact is that Florida is suffering enormously because all DeSantis wants to be is Trump too.
Well, people who support DeSantis, and you'll understand, sir, that I'm on radio. My job is always to present the other point of view. Some people will say that despite that aging population, compared, for example, to what happened in New Jersey and the debacle there and the number of people who died, especially the elderly. And you think
Florida's
about the
let
me finish,
sir.
The aging population in that part of the country. Actually, some might say, and you understand, it's not me espousing my political point of view, that comparatively he did rather well. And you look, for example, at New Jersey and what happened and the scandal over Cuomo, and who knows? You clearly have animus against this particular candidate. One thing we do know is we can't predict the future. What I want to ask you, sir,
yes, please.
is this. What you did say, which I think would have resonated with a lot of people, is what America means in the world now.
Yeah.
One of the things I talked about yesterday on my radio show was what it meant to be to have the privilege of living in a Western liberal democracy. And in the past, you'll remember Thatcher Reagan, you'll know that it was our strength that led to the end of the Cold War, not our weakness. And above all else, that our word, our promise meant something. Now, this is not the first time, to say the very least, that the promises of this country, or indeed your own, have been hollow, that we've reneged on them, to say the very least. But what does it do to you as a proud American citizen to watch what is happening in Afghanistan? And what does it mean for the future of that great nation, yours, an idea that's lit the world for so long in terms of how it's perceived around the world?
It breaks my heart.
Well, sir, I don't think you can put it clearer than that. We may disagree on a number of things, but at least, and this doesn't seem to be, I have to say, easy to do in your country, we were able to have a disagreement in a cordial way. And thank you for your informed opinions. That was Professor John Christopher Boer, who is the White House correspondent for Real Political News in Washington. It's a privilege to have you on today, sir. We are now going to go to the news, but I will be back and I'm going to be with you till 7 o'clock. This is Rob Rinder. And I'm having a lovely afternoon on Talk Radio because despite the horrors of everything, we're going to be talking about Gwyneth Paltrow.